My name is Betsy Anderson, and I live in Wells, Maine. I'm on the steering committee of Save Our Water, and I'm a citizen of the Branch Brook Aquifer in York County. Not only are these the worst economic times we have experienced in the past several decades, but these are most certainly the worst of times in terms of the environment. Leaving ourselves vulnerable to NAFTA's Chapter 11 by allowing water to be categorized as a good or as distribution services is naive and dangerous. If, and really when challenged, would the state of Maine have the economic and human resources to succeed in protecting our water and its people in a foreign trade tribunal which lacks transparency and occurs somewhere far away? Water is a dynamic entity that is as essential to life as the air we breathe. How or why would we consider water a commodity to be regulated under the same international trade laws as oil, automobiles, and pharmaceutical drugs? I ask for a resolution calling for a complete withdrawal of water from all free trade and investment agreements, specifically the General Agreement on Trade and Services. A successful Maine economy depends on a clean and healthy environment. Recognizing and protecting our water is as important as protecting the air we breathe. We want Maine to be free from any chance of enslavement by Nestle or any other multinational corporation whose actions are protected under the North American Free Trade Agreement and the World Trade Organization. Let's think globally and act locally. Let's keep the Maine in Maine.
I'm still Herbert J. Hoffman from Brooklyn. And I'd like to indicate that I am in full agreement with the testimony offered by Betsy Anderson, a steering committee member of Save Our Water. In an effort not to be redundant with testimony being offered by others, although redundancy is an indication of level of support and shared views, I will focus on two issues: the rights of corporations and the ownership of water. Rights of corporation. As a result of a Supreme Court decision toward the end of the 19th century, corporations have been considered to be persons and thereby enjoy all the rights granted by the Constitution. Despite this ruling, we know in our minds and in our hearts that corporations are not persons. This is relevant because corporations have frequently used their status as persons in courts of law to deny the rights of real people, persons. There is a long legal history of the United States courts rendering decisions that favor corporations over individuals. In the instance of multinational corporations bringing suit under the investor state rights provisions found in NAFTA, CAFTA, and other trade agreements, it will ultimately be a decision-making body outside the jurisdiction of local, state, and federal law that will render the judgment. To the ownership of water. Currently, groundwater in Maine falls under the absolute dominion rule, as we have heard. Water, the essential life ingredient, is too precious not to be held in the public trust for the people of Maine. Under current Maine law, if a multinational initiates an investor rights suit over a water issue, and the water is owned by an entity other than the state or a municipality, it will be the municipality and the state that will be the defendants. If this be the case, then let us defend our water and fight the legal battle to protect the and not fight the legal battle to protect the profits of landowners, that is, individuals or corporations. I therefore urge this body to find a way to protect the state and its water, both surface and ground, with regard to the potential predatory behavior of multinational corporations. Further, I urge this commission to advocate for abolishing absolute dominion as it applies to water, and support the states placing groundwater in the public trust. The people deserve no less. It seems that the words of Mark Twain continue to be relevant. Twain said, "Whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. Let us win this fight for the people."
My name is Emily Posner. I come from the headwaters of the Sheepshead River over in Waldo County, and I work for an organization called the Defending Water for Life campaign. I'm going to give you all an abbreviated version of my testimony. The Defending Water for Life campaign strongly supports the Commission calling for water to be carved out of the GATT and all trade agreements. However, we are still left trying to decipher how bottled water will be covered by trade agreements in order to understand where Mainers might be vulnerable to challenges. Is bottled water a good? Well, bottled water is sold in the supermarket, so it must be a good. This means that it should be covered by GATT Article 11, the General Elimination of Quantitative Restrictions, first agreed in 1947, and then renewed when the WTO was formed in 1994. Article 11 bars governmental measures other than taxes, duties, and similar charges on the exportation or sale for export of any covered product absent an exemption. There are two general exemptions specified in Article 20 of the GATT. A country must be able to show that a restriction of the export of a specific good, i.e. bottled water, is 1, necessary to protect human, animal, or plant life or health, and 2, relates to the conservation of exhaustible natural resources if such measures are made effective in conjunction with restrictions on domestic production or consumption. Nestle is already exporting its Poland Spring brand to Canada and is actively prospecting for more spring sites in Maine to supply the multinational corporation's global market. It is therefore appropriate, indeed critically important, that Maine examine the impact of selling Maine's water to Canada in bottles in relation to Maine's obligation to protect human, animal, or plant life or health. To do this, the ecological, economic, and health impacts of bottled water production should be comprehensively examined. This means looking at the cancer-causing pollution related to plastic manufacturing, potential unsustainable aquifer drawdown, carbon emissions, the impacts of oceanic pH, and fish life must all be examined as we work to protect all human, all animal, and all plant life and health throughout the world. Second, despite Maine's apparent abundance of water, there is a real question as to whether water should be written off as an inexhaustible natural resource. The Commission's report must not only recognize the world's water crisis, but also the root causes that have created such water shortages in so many of the world's regions. Here, the impacts of climate change need to be given very serious consideration. If there were to be a restriction on the amount of Poland Spring bottled water sold under GATT, it would have to apply to domestic sales as well as sales to Canada or other countries. The French ecologist, researcher, and explorer Jacques Cousteau once said, "We forget that the water cycle and the life cycle are one." Let's not forget that here in Maine. Our lives and cultures are intricately tied to the health of our aquifers, streams, lakes, rivers, and ponds. If we allow our water, the source of all life, to be commodified, we put the very basis of ourselves up for sale on the open marketplace.
I'm a farmer. I raise beef cattle. I'm also a woodlot owner. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm a planning board member in the town of Newfield. Wearing all those hats, I understand the importance of all of the resources Maine has to offer, and they're wonderful. What's concerning to me is that when I am working with the other members and we're drafting an ordinance at the town level, we can make our guidelines, ordinances, and laws stricter than the state level, never more lenient. Yet, we have the potential to have our laws challenged by this international trade. So why do they not have to live up to the guidelines that we do? We have strict laws for a reason. Remember, our borders were closed to cattle importation because of mad cow disease. Laws are set up to protect the people. Think of also what's happening in the North Woods. I mean, I have forest land, nothing like what's up north, but I see it when I'm having selective cutting to my woodlot. I ask you to think long and hard about protecting all of Maine's natural resources, but most importantly, water, as it is essential to life. No organism can live without it. And again, I'm just going to say it is essential to life as we know it.
So, we will be issuing a report which contains research that Mr. Warren has done for us, as well as the public testimony that was shared tonight, as well as information from our Attorney General's office. Once all of this is compiled, these two committees will have the chance to review all of that information, approve it, and the Water Resources Planning Committee will then present that report by January 1st to the Legislature's Joint Standing Committee on Natural Resources, which is then authorized to report out legislation in the second regular session of the 24th legislature if they choose to do so. So that's where we are, that's where we're headed.